Navigator. So just also before we start, Mr. Cordova said that part of this is so that we can have common assessments on campuses, so that campuses, teachers on those campuses can use the same assessments, and also at the cluster level. So think kind of in that mindset as we're going through on how to do those things. So our session norms, we're going to approach the content as a learner, and we'll share the air. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions. My ask for that is that you just drop those questions in the chat. I'm going to make a copy of that and make sure that if I can't answer it, it gets answered for you from the people who know even more than I do. And then I'd love just to read our network mission. So who would love to come off mute and read that? And then my follow-up question is going to be, okay, so how does learning about assessments help us further our network mission? So who wants to come off mute and read our mission for us?
I'll do it.
Thank you.
Okay, our mission in the Northwest Network is to educate all students for success by providing them an equitable, high-quality education through innovative opportunities, powerful relationships, and global citizenship development.
Okay, and for the follow-up, so how does talking about creating assessments in our new platform help us further that mission? Don't be shy, just hop off mute.
To educate all students for success, the assessments will be able to tell us where the students are and what we need to do to make them successful.
Awesome. And I see in the chat the equitable piece as well, so we can think about that. Hopefully you already got to see some of the really neat things that the new assessment network does for Common Assessment 1 by giving those accommodations to students. I can think of that. So that's how we are furthering our mission today. This is not just an assessment training. So like I said, we're going to get into the system. So we're going to use the training site today. So I know that we all have access to Dan, but we're going to use a training site. So over here, I'm dropping this link in the chat. Everybody hop on this link and go ahead and claim one of the username and passwords. And then once you do that, you can use this link here up at the top, dallastrain.schoolcity.com, to open it up. There is no space between these, even though it looks like there is. So it's just District 1, no space on the site. Make sure if someone's name is there, you don't write over it. I'll give us some time. I see there are 30, 40 people on the call. So I'll wait till I see about that many names. I'm also going to drop the presentation link in the chat, just in case you have to step away for a second or there's an emergency, you can kind of go back and see where we're at. Good. Yes. Oh, look, here's some people who are like, you know what, I'm just going to go way down there. And then I love that. Okay. I know you guys have access to that, so you guys log in. Now I just about another minute to do that. And while we're doing that, I'll tell you why we're going to the training site today and not working in our own accounts, because we know we have them, right? So everything I'm going to show you today is active and live and available in your accounts for the permissions that you have. So whether that be school or district or a certain set of students. Just to make sure that we're not immediately overwhelming the system with a ton of DOLs or assessments. And there's some really strict kind of protocol that we need to follow just to make sure that that place doesn't become insane. So I know some of you who've been around, you remember Performance Matters, you would go in and there were so many assessments, it was kind of hard to find what you needed sometimes. So part of the today's training is I'm going to go through the organization that'll make sure that things stay where they need to for the district. Okay. Let me go ahead and move on. So here's our objectives for today. These are the 3 types of assessments I'm going to walk us through. The first and most important is the answer key only. I think this is going to be the one that you guys will use the most. We'll also look at express assessments, which is kind of what they sound, really fast, and then performance-based assessment. Okay, so before we even get to the assessments, there's a really unique tool that I want to point out. So if you guys are on your training sites, this little 3-line icon over in the top right, I want you to click on that, and you're going to have a drop down that says groups. So one of the ways you can organize assessments is by giving that assessment only to certain student groups. I'm going to walk through how we can create student groups, okay? So click these 3 bars up here and groups. Next, this is what is going to show up. You'll manage groups. So you can have student groups, course groups, or PLC staff groups. Right now in our district one, there are no student groups, but those can be created. So you'll want to come over here and push the button that says create group, because you're highlighted on students. That's why that'll work. And you can create a new student group based on the permissions that you have. So if you have a campus permissions, you could create a 3rd grade math student group. So if you created an assessment, you could go ahead and assign it to that group of students. If you have district access or a different sort of access, you can combine certain schools, or if you only have like a 1 group of students, obviously those will be the students that you can join into a group. If I check this on your Real page, just to make sure that hopefully I think all the people on this call should have school level access, so you can see all of the students in your campus. So if we get off the call and you're looking in your own account, make sure that you have that. And if you don't, put in an IT ticket so you'll be able to access those options. So based on the permissions that you have and in your test site, you can kind of play with whatever's there. And I really do encourage you to play with all of the kind of toggles in the test site. When we get to real life, you'll want to keep both of these on so that teachers are only getting their students' reports. Okay, so once you've selected the kids, or you have kind of said, hey, pull kids from this teacher or this school or this grade level, you'll want to enter a name for that student group. So the naming conventions, there's going to be a couple of these throughout the presentation today. It's going to be our network name, so Northwest or NW _ whatever grade it is. And then if there's a content as well or a subject, you can put an underscore and what that content is as well. So I'm going to give you time now to create a student group in your test site. So in the test site, you should be playing, create a student group. And when you've done that in the chat, you're going to say, I did it. And once I see that we've done it, we'll move on. Awesome. I love the explanation. Yes, I can drop the little tiny CC again. So the link I just put in the chat is to get to the spreadsheet so that you can claim one of these test sites. Nice, we've all got group names, so great.
Alex, I was talking about the bit.ly for the practice site.
Oh, I think, oh, just like the, okay, gotcha. Is it for like?
Is it different than what we normally use in Clever, right?
Yes, it's this,
Okay.
it's in the train. So it's at the top of the, at the top of the spreadsheet, the
Okay.
DallasTrain.schoolstudy.com.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I'm sorry.
Oh, you're good, you're good. Awesome, done, I did it, great. Once you've done, so stay on this page right here. This is what you should see after you click create that student group. Nice. Okay, so I'm going to keep moving. So after you create that student group and you push next, you should come to the screen that has all of the other student groups that were created on there. And the view column is going to be the most important last step you'll need to take in dealing with student groups. So there's a little, I forget, hold on. Beforehand, before you kind of click this down arrow, I think it says private, the default is private. You'll want to change that to semi-private, and let me tell you why. If you keep it private, you are the only person who's seeing anything for that student group. So even those students' teachers can't see that assessment. So if you change it to semi-private, and then you click on the little edit icon over here, you can select the teachers that need that group shared with them. So if you do a student group for third grade math, you can go in here and make sure you edit it so that it's semi-private, and the teachers, the actual classroom teachers of records, and probably our special education teachers as well, and anybody else who's supporting those third grade students has access to see that student group. And that'll be the last thing to kind of create your student group, anything that you'll need to do to create it and give the right permissions. So I want to pause kind of at this point because that's all I can tell you about student groups right now. And I want to, if there's any questions, you can feel free to come off mute or type them in the chat.
I do have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
Alex. So if we create, for example, if I'm creating a group of some students that I'm monitoring and I want to pull reports just for them, I could go straight to this part and I'll be able to pull their reports.
So no, this is more so for creating groups who are going to take certain assessments. And so it's not so much on kind of the back end monitoring aspect, it's on the front end who's actually going to take these assessments.
What you can do though, like when you were going back and looking at your CA data, is to break it down, and it gives you the option to filter on a particular group. And once you do that, you can look at the data for that particular group. So like we created groups for our virtual learners and a group for our in-person learners, and we were able to go back and look between both sets of data. You just have to filter under the particular test that you're looking at.
Awesome. And I just want to clarify too, because you guys have more opportunities to use this than I do. So you created the groups in the same way through the student groups tab?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So just kidding. It's on the front end and the back end.
Thank you.
Anything else about the student groups? Okay. We're going to move. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I'm so sorry. I cannot figure out, of course, and Paul, right when I'm talking, I can't figure out where to go to. I'm in the school city district and I went to the waffle and I clicked it, but I've like looked at assessments, I've looked at reports. I can't figure out where it is that I'm supposed to find student groups.
Gotcha. So here's my kind of opening screen. Student groups is over here on the right. So it's this three line button over here, and click down for the groups, and then it'll open up your student groups and you can create a group through this way.
Okay, I couldn't see that. Because I
So
was,
it's not on the waffle. It's on this main page over here to the far right. There's 3 lines.
I see that now. Okay, and then where do you go from the 3 lines? I'm sorry.
It's so go down to groups.
Okay, got it.
You are so welcome. Okay, so we're going to go on and we're going to do answer key only assessments now. So why are we doing answer key only? So this will allow users to create an answer sheet for an existing assessment. Multiple item types are supported, so it's not just multiple choice, which is great. And these can be administered via a printed answer sheet or online, which is what we're doing online in the student portal. We want to do as much of that as possible so that we're really prepping students to take their STAR online when that happens. So here's our click path. I'm going to kind of click through this. You guys are inside of your training site. You're following along here. So you're going to click on the waffle this time. So we are going to go through the launch pad. You're going to click assessments because that's what we're talking about. And then right up here at the top right is create assessment. You're going to click that button and there's going to be options that drop down. So there's 5 different options. We're only talking about 3 today because they're the only 3 that our district is using right now. But the first one is answer key only. So that's the one that you're going to click. So waffle, assessments, create assessments, answer key only. So everyone should be there. And when you do that, there's going to be, I just want us to kind of look ahead, right? So we're going to fill out assessment info. We're going to add standards. We're going to look at the answer key. We're going to type that in. We're going to put in performance levels and setup, okay? So first, let's kind of go step by step. I'm going to point out important things we need to pay attention to. So the first is assessment level. Now, my assessment, if you choose that one, it's going to go to the students that you have, okay? Just that you have. So a lot of us have kind of campus level, so it'll go to that campus. The next one will be school assessment, which is probably, I mean, that's the one you guys are going to want to use because it'll be for your campus. And you shouldn't have access to the district assessment, but if you have district access, the district assessment will send it to everybody in the district, okay? So for most of your purposes, it is probably going to be a school assessment unless an ILC is creating it at the district level for your kids, okay? The next kind of line is assessment name, and here is the naming convention that the district is using this year, okay? So for just one school, it's up here, the school year, school name, grade level, subject, test title, and initials. It's long. I'm going to leave it up here. It's also going to be in your PowerPoint. But so that we don't have 8,000 assessments that have 100 different naming conventions, this is what we'll use as a district. For multiple schools in the network, so if you're the ILC or if you are assisting the ILC with something, it's the same, except instead of the school name, it will be the network. Okay. So you've figured out what kind of assessment it is, what the name is going to be. And I'll let you guys practice using this naming convention on your assessment you're creating on your practice site right now. Okay, I'm going to paste paste or try to paste the naming convention in the chat. Okay. So first we have the assessment name. We've chosen what subject it is. That's straightforward. The next thing is called collection. So you're gonna wanna make sure that you choose the correct collection for this. This is another organization way for the whole district to make sure that yours aren't everywhere. You can kind of identify where your assessments are. So what you see on the screen, I have created in the real system right now. So these collections, it'll just be a drop down and you can choose what makes the most sense. So there's a Cordova ELA, math, other, science, and social studies. Just choose the correct collection to put it in. It'll help us organize. All right, set up for multiple grades. I toggled that to no. I can't think of a situation where you'd want an assessment for multiple grades. You guys are the experts, so you might want one. And then it says student selection. So again, this is where those student groups come into play. The first choice says schedule all students to take this assessment. And here again, if you're a teacher and you're creating this assessment, it's going to go to the students in your roster and they'll be scheduled. School level, all of the students in the entire school will be scheduled to take the assessment as a result, okay? So even though it's really tempting just to say, hey, schedule all the students to take this assessment, unless you're a teacher, I don't think that's what you want to do. So the last option here is schedule students by student group. That's what you're going to want to click and kind of identify that group, right? That third grade math group, fourth grade writing, whatever it is. Okay, so assessment info, I'm going to leave you all there. We can kind of get to the end of the assessment info. I'm going to give us 30 seconds. So make sure you can get all the way to the end of the assessment info, and then we'll go on to that next standards tab. And if you have questions, feel free to come off mute.
I have a question. I'm in the school, so the school city one, and it has the role as district. Like I see more of the networks, like ACE, Central.
Yeah, like, so you're creating an assessment right now and you see that?
Yes, so like when existing collections, so I didn't see the one that you did.
So what probably happened is that that's not in the, it might not be in your specific training site, but when you get to the real one, it'll look like this one where it's nested with the whole network, the cluster, and then the cluster by content.
Okay.
Okay, so we should,
I did have a question, Alex, and thank you for sharing this. Will we get, I know right now you're putting in the answer key, right, as you're creating it?
Correct.
Will there be a place or later on in the training where we'll actually upload the test itself? That way we can actually use it, in the computers. That way the students can practice.
Yes, so the students, you can upload a PDF of the assessment, and so students will have that kind of on a split screen in this side of the system where they're looking at the assessment, but they're answering it over on the right based on the answer key that you put in.
And you'll show us that, right?
Yes, I do have a screen grab of that, yeah. Okay, so after you click next, and you go to the next part, the next one is the standards. So this one, when I have a huge red flag, unlike in other testing systems where you can, as you kind of go through and you're putting in the number and the multiple choice answer and you're attaching the standard, at this point in the creation of the assessment, you have to know all of the standards that are going to be on that assessment. So you have your assessment, kind of take it in hand, and on the front cover somewhere, go through it. You have to identify all of the standards that are going to be in that assessment before you move on from this point. Okay, just a heads up. So on your practice assessment that you are creating, go ahead This area is where you're going to, it should be Texas in the training site. It's where you're going to choose the standards, and then you can choose the grade. And then once you do that, you can click the cluster of the standards and then select which ones will be in there. I'm going to give you some practice time kind of looking at that. And if it's just a weekly DOL, it might be only 2 standards, and that's totally okay. But if we're looking at kind of a bigger assessment, there may be, you know, 10, 11 standards that you're going to have to remember, oh yeah, I need to put all those in. So we have our assessment info, we have our standards. The next part is the answer key. Super straightforward. What's the number of items? If you'd like to select multiple forms, so to kind of limit the amount of cheating and kind of students see things in random orders, you can click that here. And once you update the number of items that you have, all of those items will show below, just like this. The default is multiple choice on all of these, but you can change one, some, or all of them. And here's all of the question types, and I'll kind of give you a brief kind of introduction to all of them. The first is constructed response. So that's going to be a longer paragraph type response. And the other one is a short answer. It's going to give you a short kind of answer box for students to type in. Both of those have to be self-scored, or they had to be scored by the teacher. So there's no kind of automatic scoring there. Those will have to be scored by the teacher. Everything else is going to be automatically scored. So we have an evidence-based selected response, a multiple binary, so it's our true, false, yes, no, multiple choice, we know what that is. Multiple response, that's for those questions where C and D can be the answer, and you want students to choose C and D. And a numerical response, that's going to be, for us math people, that's going to be our gridables, okay? So what I want you to do is I want you to be the learner here. So on your assessment that you're creating in your practice platform, do 6 items and kind of look and see what each of these look like as you put them in. And I'm just going to be here for questions. I'm going to put 2 minutes on so you can explore all of those.
What does add tolerance mean on the gridable?
So that means like if an answer is 2.2, you can add an additional 0 after that. Like we know that doesn't change the answer, but if a student typed that in, it would still be counted as correct. So it allows for multiple representations within that gridable.
Is there like a preview option that lets you see how your questions are being formatted?
That's a great question. I'm not sure if there is, but after we kind of get to, once we've created the assessment and have published it, you can go back in and we can look at what you created and you'll be able to look at it that way and then further edit it if you need to.
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, about 20 more seconds and we'll keep going. Just make sure you choose an answer. That's all the slide was for. But I'd love to hear from maybe one or two people. What was something you learned as you were going through the question types and putting them in there that you want to share with the group?
Well, I learned about the tolerance.
Awesome. I love that. Yes. Will that be helpful for students?
Absolutely.
Yes, and us. Any other learnings?
I thought the gridables was good, having the multiple versions of gridables, because you can choose it based on the grade level. So I thought that was pretty good. Yeah,
that's one of my favorite parts about the gridable is it's not just whatever the system thinks the gridable should look like, it's actual, the TEA ones, right, that our kids will see. So thank goodness that's there. Awesome, those are my two favorite things too. All right, we'll keep going. So assessment info, check. Standards, check. Answer keys, check. Performance levels. So this, if we load from available templates, go ahead and click that button in your practice site. Hopefully there's some district loaded ones in there, but there may just be like one template that doesn't necessarily look like performance bands that we know. So the hope would be, right, that the templates will be uploaded for us by the district, that we can kind of scroll down to whatever tested content it is, and those performance bands will already be set for us, right? Like I know if you've taught 5th grade math for a year, you know what those performance level indicators are. So that's the hope, but if it's not there or something messes up, the way you can create one yourself by adding this performance level right here. So if the template you see isn't in there, or if your campus is saying, man, that's TEA, but we have higher standards for our kids, we say that it did not meet is a 70, I don't know. You can change that. So what you'll do here is you'll just add a performance level. A note on that is start with the lowest band. So start with what the lowest band is and then increase up to 100 or whatever your numeric score will be. This is hopefully right. We'll have templates and we won't have to worry about it. But if you do have to create one, you can create it. So let's go ahead and practice adding that performance level and creating one ourselves. Because the template might not be there.
Alex, what do you put in for the multiplier for constructed response, for a short answer response? It's asking for a multiplier.
Are you back over on the answer key one?
Uh-huh.
I don't know about the multiplier, but I'm putting that on my...
Because it says rubric, so obviously that would be a 4. It's a 1, 2, 3, or 4, but then it's asking for a rubric multiplier.
I don't know the answer, so I'm going to write it down. Do you have like... In an assessment you're thinking of, would you have like just multiple constructed responses, or would you have one constructed response in addition to like some multiple choice questions?
Multiple choice with at least one constructed response. So if they're doing a short answer response.
Yeah,
like
my initial thought would be like, would you want to include more weight on that certain constructive response, or does it get the same weight as the multiple choice questions? And that would, and however you answer that question would identify like what you would want the multiplier to be. But if there's anyone who has...
Yeah, I played around with it a little bit. I think it has to do with the weight. Like my rubric points say 1, and then rubric multiplier is 2, which gives you a total of 2 points at the very end. So I think it might be how much it's weighted.
I think that makes sense, because if you look over here, like once, I know we're in performance level, once you get over here, it has like points possible. So if you want, instead of 1 point possible for that constructive response, you want 2 or 3 or 4 to kind of give more weight to it in the overall scheme of the assessment. That's how I think you would use that multiplier.
Okay.
But I'm putting it on my list of questions. Okay, so there's our performance levels. Did anybody have like a good template that was already in there, or did someone create their own? Who would like to share some of that learning?
when I'm trying to create the new bands, where it says points possible, it would only let you put up to 5.
I think that's because you chose 5. I'm assuming your assessment's 5 questions.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so that's where that's coming from. If you want to do by percentage, it will, I think it automatically kind of puts the points in here for you.
Hmm.
Did that work for you?
No, I just went blank. I'm gonna try again.
Okay. We're all learning together. I love this.
Right. So when I put in a description, and then when I go to percentage, I just get the red circle with the with the line between it, and I can't edit.
Okay. I'm gonna do what you're not supposed to do. So don't look at my screen. Don't do as I do. Oh. So you guys are looking at my screen. It won't let you proceed unless you put in the standards. So that's a great saver because I've made them before and not done that and been very upset. Okay, so if we add a performance level, let's say did not meet, percentage from, oh, I see what you're saying.
I think you have to add another performance level before it will let you manipulate.
So when I was creating some of the tests at our school, what we ended up doing is that on the screen before where you're putting the answer keys, if you'll go back to that screen, you have to make sure that you're identifying the point system for each question. Otherwise, it will not let you do a performance level for that. So you see where it says points? So you have 6 questions, depending on the number of questions that you're answering, and then you divide it by the 100 and then get that percentage and then put it on points on each of the questions so that it can give you a performance level.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And then the other one is you can't change this 0 right here because it's going to start at 0 for the percentage. So until you put that second one, it's going to go 0 to something. And then once you add another one, you can say 50 to 70 and kind of add a band like that. That first one's always going to stay at 0. You can't change it, but you can change the incrementals up to there. Awesome. Thank you for that question. That was good learning. That was good group learning right there. And then after you complete the performance levels, the last one is setup. So this is really kind of the nitty gritty. What is the administration window? A note on that is that for anything that has to be scored by the teacher, it has to be done by the end of that window. So don't necessarily put the end of that window as the last day the students are going to test. Give yourself or the teachers a grace day or 2 to be able to go in and score that. Method of delivery, for us, we're going to use that online answer sheet. We're doing things through online. The intended user is going to be the student. Someone asked about the online preview. That would be a great time right now to kind of look at that. Upload the student assessment. So hopefully there's a PDF of whatever you're putting in this answer key only so students can really get practice of looking at it online and taking the test online. And you'll upload that into this folder right here. So enable browser lockdown. That was turned off for the district for common assessments, just so that students could get in a little bit easier. That's a choice that you guys can make. Different online settings, you can toggle and show what those are. This is going to come up, it kind of opens up, if you did the accommodations training or are familiar with those, it's going to open up a lot of those. So there might be a certain test where every student needs certain accommodations or certain settings, and you can apply those here. for any students with accommodations in the system that will override or add to what you put in here. Okay, so this is stuff for all kids, but any of those kids that have the accommodation profile, they will still get their accommodations. Answer sheet template and bubble size. This is if you're printing off sheets. You can do it for an individual student or just a blank one for a class roster, and they kind of identify their identifying information. Let's see. Also, you can identify when you're going to print the answer sheets, and then the scoring end date needs to be within the window, and give teachers some time to do that. So those are all the kind of nitty-gritty parts about the setup. If you guys had any questions about that. And then this last, the personalized review assessment, we're going to go into that. Anything about these settings up here?
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
On the online settings, if you scroll down to where it has highlighter, that's grayed out.
Uh-huh.
When I tried to create a test, that was grayed out, and I couldn't choose that as a tool for the students to use, but I know on Star Online they have that option, and also on the Common Assessment they had it available.
Gotcha. It might be something that you can, because you know how for the accommodations you can assign it to certain kids, and you can also assign it to tests. What I would do after we publish this assessment is go back in and see if you can add it there, if you can't do it on the online settings right here.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. But yeah, I don't know why that's grayed out here. Okay. So lots of settings there. Okay, so when you click to publish, this will show up. It's kind of giving you, hey, these are things that you can do. You can use some flags, you can use scheduling. You can go to these advanced settings and play with it more, or you can say, no, thank you. I'm done with this assessment. I think I've done everything I need. And once you do that, it is going to show up here on the assessments tab. Okay, so it takes you right back to if you would have gone to the waffle and gone to assessments. Here's all of the assessments that's been created on this practice tab. So you can kind of scroll through and look. And you'll see why naming conventions are important, because on this one there's 348. I did not use the correct naming convention, so I will not be able to find mine probably. But listen, I know that was a lot, and I know we've already been together for 45 minutes. That's the most important. What we just went through is the most important thing you're going to need to know. Okay. Those steps on how to do most of what you'll need to be doing is that answer key only. So that's why we kind of spent so much time there, but I'll go back over to the presentation. So Mr. Cordova, you had asked, what does the student view look like with the test uploaded? So there'll be a PDF over here that students can scroll through, and their answer choices will be over here on the right. Okay. So students will be able to scroll through, just make sure that the numbers, right? There's numbers on there and they match the numbers that you put in the answer key only.
But for the reading, will they have an opportunity to be able to highlight?
Over on the PDF itself? I don't know the answer to that question. That's good.
Yeah, I think some of our teams had, they've been playing with that, and so I thought that whenever we're able to create, just like with Common Assessment, surely there is some kind of way to do it, since Common Assessment has been uploaded.
Right.
So we wanted to create as many opportunities for our students to be exposed to those features,
Right. And to my knowledge, so the Common Assessment wasn't created with the 3 ways that we're talking about that we've been trained on so far. So hopefully in January, we'll have access to what they use to do that. I know some of it, I know in January, there's also going to be an item bank available that will be more like the Common Assessment. So we'll have actual items that are inside of the system, unlike a PDF that's uploaded.
We work with what we have for now. That should be okay.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Yes. We'll perfect this, what we know. So So that's what the student view will look like. So the personalized review assessment, I skipped over this button earlier, but I'm going to kind of show you what that looks like. So if you click this while you're creating the assessment, what you're basically creating is after the students have taken the assessment, you're giving them additional opportunities for learning. So if you click this, it opens up into a new window, and you can do it on the assessment you created. You can go and find that in the list and open it back up. And if you click on the personalized review assessment, it opens something that looks like this. And for each standard, you can add a resource to it. So you can add a YouTube video. You can, add the lesson. If it was a video lesson that students have already seen, you can re-add that here so they have to go back and watch it. Or if there's a Khan Academy video or any other tools that you're using, you can choose and add that resource here. And you can also do a challenge activity. So if students already aced all the standards, they got 100 on this, you can give them an extension beyond what was on the assessment to work with. So after you say, hey, I want to add a resource, it's going to tell you to type in the resource URL. And then if you want to, you can add a multiple choice question onto that to assess the learning. So it could be the same question that you asked in the assessment. The student's going to get it right. Go watch this video and do this question again. But it's really that ability to not just leave the assessment at the assessment, but use the data that you get from the assessment to provide the students a personalized review of what the standards were. So on that screen, there's an assignment options that you can drop down. You can choose, what is the maximum required activities per student? What's the minimum? What's a threshold where students need to go and create that activity? And then if you want to require them to do in a prescribed order, you can you're just editing the assessment on this tab. This is what the teacher view looks like once students are kind of in the PRA and they're working with it. So you can look at the teacher view this way, or you can view it in a list like this that has your student name, what their action was, how much they spent on it, and what the assessment or what the activity results were. So really neat system. I think once you do your first AKOs on campus, I think it would be great to try this out as well, just to get students seeing and engaging with this system. Okay, this is the boring stuff, but it's the big organizational things to remember. The first is naming conventions for your assessment. The second one is create those student groups by network or school and grade and content. And then make sure you're saving to the correct collection. That'll help you find it later, and that'll keep it out of everybody else's. Okay. So the next two, I'd love for you to kind of go through them and really, engage with it. But I'm just gonna give you the information about these because I really think that what you're gonna be most likely using is those AKOs. And I'll tell you why. For express assessments, these are for you to create an answer sheet for an existing assessment that is not aligned to standards. Now, I'm not gonna speak for your executive director, but I am. And I would guess that it's probably, wouldn't it be great to give any assessment to kids that isn't aligned to standards, right? But I'm gonna teach you how to do it anyways. So this can be administered via a printed answer sheet or online in the student portal. The biggest difference between the AKOs is you're not gonna put any standards in it, right? It's just gonna be raw numerical data. So this looks really similar, right? You're gonna give it a name, you're gonna give it a subject, what collection it needs to go into, the number of items, and the student selection, who's taking it. These are all the same choices from AKOs, so I'm not gonna go into it. There's our naming conventions again. Here, when you choose the number of items, it doesn't take you to a separate screen. You kind of put in what the correct answer choices are right here. You have the same amount of answer choices, but there's not going to be any standards attached to it. Same thing on the administration window and how you're going to deliver it. This is all those setup options that we just looked at in the AKOs. They're here as well. And that's it. So it's an express assessment, and I'm going to expressly train you over it because I really don't think you're going to use that one, but there might be a situation, so now you know how to do it. The last is performance-based assessments. So it's what it sounds like. You're going to create a scoring grid or a rubric for an assessment that's given outside of the Schoolcity platform, but you're going to put that rubric and the scores inside of the platform so that you can analyze it easier than a spreadsheet on your own. So we're going to follow the same click path. So we're going to go to our assessments. We're going to create the assessment, and this time we're choosing performance-based. Same as we saw before, you're choosing the assessment level and the name and the subject and the collection. You can use standards on this one. So even though it's some sort of different performance outside of the system, maybe it's a writing composition, you can still include the standards in this. This says include notes. So notes with scores, notes only on the assessment. These notes are for the teacher, not necessarily for the student. So these are notes that you can take, but the student won't see them unless you share them with them. Oops, I'm too fast. Let's see. And those are things we've seen before. Down here, this is different. So the score type, numeric, is it a range? Is it selected values? Is there a range on here? Is it a 1 to 4? I know for some writing compositions, that's what it'll be. So your range here would be a 1 to a 4. Again, naming conventions, I included that again because it's important. Again, you can add the standards. The notes with the scores, it's only available to the teacher. Here it asks if you want to enter a rubric. And so if there is a rubric, you can say yes, and you can just upload that right into the system to have that available. Here, I think this might be more for our specials, but you can set these up for multiple grades. And you just are choosing which grades that the students are in. It'll ask you some follow-up questions about student selection, who's taking this. And based on different grade levels, you can choose different answers. Here we're getting into the score type and what their range is. So this particular range, they put in 0 to 100. And so once we go through the assessment info and the standards and the objectives, again, we'll have a performance level. So same as last time, you can look and see if there's a template that makes sense. If not, you'll create one. So you'll start at the bottom, it'll be a 0. You'll create the next one, which will start at the next band. Okay. There's a summary on these as well. With the administration window, the scoring end date. Because these are all things that are scored outside of the system, it's something to keep in mind when you're creating this administration window so that teachers get those scores in by the end of it. So once you publish your assessment, so this is on one of the testing sites, you can see number 4 right here. It's a performance-based assessment. You'll click on this, even though it looks grayed out right now, and it'll say performance-based scoring. So you can open that up and score for the students. Okay, so I know I went through those last two pretty quickly, but it had a lot of the same characteristics as that AKO. But I just want to open it up for questions. So take this time, kind of keep playing in the system. And if you have questions, put it in the chat, or you can ask it out loud too. And anything I don't know, I'm going to pass on.
So are teachers or us able to put in, like Mr. Cordoba was saying, the actual assessment along with the answer key Because that's what teachers are wanting, is they're wanting the kids to be able to practice on it.
Right. Yeah. So, and like he was saying, it's not going to show up like the common assessment where it's, you know, really pretty and it looks like STAR, but they can upload a PDF. So if we go to an AKO, let me see if I can edit this one. There's an option on the AKO to, I can't edit that one because I didn't make it. Let me go back to the deck. See if it's on. Okay, let's look and see. Trying to find the screen grab of where it shows to upload. I think it might be in the setup. Yeah, so it's in the setup of the AKO. There's this button right here that says upload student assessment with a little folder. So when they put the PDF for the exam in there, it will track along. I don't know if it's going to track along with it, but the students will have the PDF where they can look at the assessment over on the left and then the answer choices over on the right.
So is that, so are they able to highlight?
So they're not, right, they're not going to be able to highlight or take notes this way because all that they're going to see is the PDF. So this is what it looks like for them. They just see kind of like the scrolling PDF over here on the left. So they won't be able to highlight it. They'll be able to look at it, right? And they'll have the answer choice on the right. So it is not exactly what they've seen on common assessments or what they'll see with, you know, their bigger assessments.
Do you know when, or I know you said January, right?
They want practice like with the common assessment.
Yeah, I